You can see that I have this app installed, and when I go and create this share link, now I have saved this link, and if I click on this link, it will open that particular story. And what would happen if I uninstall it? Let's uninstall it. Alright, now if I click on this link, what would happen that it would go to the Play Store page to that app package. Hello guys, welcome back to Careless Coders. Today we are going to be doing Firebase Dynamic Links. Now Firebase Dynamic Links generates deep links. This is also called DeepLinking, and what it does is with the help of this you can go directly to a website or any page inside your app depending upon the devices, and all of this will be done based upon the data that comes from that link. Now about deep linking in Flutter, I have also made another video in detail, but that was in branch.io. And in that video I have done it from scratch and gave you great examples. So if doing dynamic linking with Firebase is not your concern and you just want to do dynamic linking, I would suggest you go to that video. But other than that, if you want to do it by Firebase, because it is easier if you already have Firebase Cloud Firestore in your application, then it would be easier to do by just using Firebase. Now in this, we are not going to be creating the project from scratch, but what we have here is a completed project, and I was tasked to make dynamic linking happening in this. So I thought that maybe I should help other people as well. So the first step is setting up the Firebase, and that step is already done in this application. I am not going to waste time by telling you the setup part in this video. However, I will point you to a video that is in the description. That video you can see the step 1, and that is all about the setting up part, and then come back to this video. Now after the setup, first let me make you understand about the structure of this application, and then tell you what is our goal here, what we are trying to achieve, and then we can start with the steps of implementing it. Now when we first open our app, you will first see the splash screen followed by our home page. At this home page you will see a lot of stories divided into categories, and when you click on these stories, you go to a story page where you can read these stories. Now our goal, what we are trying to achieve here with dynamic links, is that this share button, when we click the share button, a link will be generated, and that link will be sent to, let's say, a friend, and that friend, when clicks on that link, then one of these three things will happen. First, if he is on a PC, he will go to the website page or the web page. Second part, if he is on a mobile device and he hasn't installed the app, then he will be redirected to Google Play Store page of our application, or App Store if it is iOS. And the third, if he has it installed, then he will go to that application, and in that application he will read directly to that story page. So now let's look at the code structure of our app. Now in our story page, it is receiving story data which contains various data such as title, content, image URL, etc., and that is being received by the story page and then rendered as what is shown to us right now. So if I sum it up, this story data is all we need to show all of the things in our story page. So if we were to get all of this data hidden inside a link, we will be able to reach any story. You don't need to be confused about all of this story data and this data and that data. The reason I'm showing you this and making you understand this is just to understand the logic behind it, and if you understand it carefully, this will really help you in implementing it in your application. Because when you're implementing deep links, it's not going to be a very small application. It's going to be application filled with various classes and all. So this logic will help you in building your deep linking. Now first let's go and import this package Flutter Dynamic Links. Alright, so now let's go to the Firebase console and then select our app, and then inside our application we need to go to the dynamic links and set up that. Then here we need to set our domain, and inside this domain, if you have the website also, then you can set your domain. But if other than that, you can also use your custom Google provided link. And so I will just type tell me and this will be a Google provided domain, but I can also write my own domain like tellmestory.com, which will look more professional. But for now we are going to go with default one. So now with this Google provided domain, we are finally here. Now we need to go to our app and write some code. One more thing to note is that if you're doing this in Android, then at this step it is enough. However, if you're doing it in iOS, then you need to complete a few more things for this step, and these are that. So you can easily do this in your application. I am doing in Android, so I don't need to do this step. One more thing worth mentioning is that this step, that if you want to open your app without going to Chrome, then you will have to add these files in your intent folder. So this is like you may have seen when you in some applications, when you open the link, you reach the Chrome and then you are redirected to that app. However, in other some applications like in Instagram, I guess, you're directly reach the application. So if you want that, then you will have to add these lines in your intent filter, otherwise you will be redirected from the Chrome. This part is if you are using a custom domain, then you need to add something else. But now the first part that we are going to be coding in our application is that we are going to be creating the link. When we click on this search, then our link of a link that is containing the metadata about all of this story is going to be generated. So inside our code, this is the place where our send buttons on click is present, and this is where we need to implement that functionality, generate deep link and share it from here. Now what we need to do first, what we are going to do is we are going to be making another class. So first make another file and we will call it now we are going to making a class that will be called Firebase Dynamic Link Service, and inside this class we are going to be making another function which will be a static function that will be a future, and it will return a link in the form of a string and we call it create dynamic link, and inside it we will provide our story data, and this link message is going to be our URL that we are going to be returning. Then we need to go to our page and package, and we need to copy this line, import the libraries, and now we will understand in detail what this is. So this is the parameters that are going to be used. First we need to fill the URI prefix when we created earlier, this one. So we write here https tell me a story, alright. Then in our URI.parse it is going to be the URL that we are going to be providing. So like we have our website, so I'm going to call it, or we can call it anything, but if you have a website then it should be your domain name. And then after this we are going to say that story data, and after story data we are going to be making a query parameter, and that will be ID, because we are going to be using the ID to get our document. That ID is going to be the Firebase ID. So we can do it like this, and then inside this we will pass our actual ID, which is going to be story data dot ID, and this way we will get the ID from our link. And if you want multiple, then you can do and here and then add another query parameter. Now here inside the package name we are going to be needing to add our package name. Now I want to show you something, that in Android parameters there is one more thing that is called a fallback URL, and this fallback URL is used to open when will determine what to happen when the app isn't present. By default it will go to Google Play Store, but like if your app is not installed at Play Store or if you are in iOS, then you can do anything else. You can direct them to a web page or anything. So for Android my app is on Play Store, but for iOS I will do that. I will redirect them to the web URL. So this is a URI, so we can just do URI.parse, and then we can pass that URL inside it, and inside iOS then it will open the browser instead of the App Store. But since we don't need the iOS or Google Analytics or iTunes or social meta tags for now, so I'll just get rid of them. Now what we need to do is we make a URI URL, and we are going to pass a boolean. This will basically determine if you want a short URL or not. So if you want a short URL, then you will pass the build short URL link method, and otherwise you will just pass the normal one. Our link message is going to be equal to URL dot toString, and then we are going to be return our link message, which is basically going to be our URL. Now we go to this send functions on click, and inside this what we will do is and we call our function inside short. We will pass false for now, and inside story data is going to be the story data that we will be passing, which is coming in this page as widget.story. Alright, after this will return a URL, a string, which will be generated deep link, and that generated deep link we will just print here. Oh, and since it is a future, we need to make it async and make it in a wait. Alright, so hopefully that should generate the link. Now let's run it and see if this works. So now let's click on the story, share, and as you can see a link is generated. However, this link will not be functional for now, since we have not done the handle link part. That will be done as our final step. Okay guys, so now that we have done the create dynamic link and the sharing part, now what we need to do is handle it. So when our application first opens, it recognizes the link where it is coming from, it handles the data that is coming, and based on that data it navigates to a certain position. So how we are going to do it? Now before we do that, we have to go to our page for dynamic links, and then here we need to do this step. This is actually optional, but it works more fluently in my experience if we do this. So we will do intent filter, and we need to copy this code in our android manifest.xml. So we go to our android manifest.xml, and we add this code in our filter. And now in our android host we add our own URI prefix, which will be found here. This is, so it is tell me a story dot page dot link, and after this it will be good to go. However, I always do flutter clean and then flutter pub get, so that it works fluently. So now that we have done this, now what will happen is that it will ask us permission to open, whether or not to open in app or in open in Chrome, just like it works in links of Instagram or other big apps. Now first we will create our function, and this is also going to be a static function, so that we get to use it directly, and will be a future void init dynamic link, and inside this we will call dot instance. Now inside this function on link instance dot on link, it is inside this is actually what will be happening if your app opens with link while your app is also in the active state. So if your app is in the active state, it's not yet closed or ran out of memory, then this function will be triggered. So let's handle this on success. And by the way, the code for this will be in the description for this page, so you can use it. However, when you are using it, you need to change the package names and the parse all of you accordingly. Okay, otherwise you can use the rest of it as yours without any problem. So now we'll do final. Now we need to create the URL. Now that we have gotten the link, what we are going to do is, first we are going to check whether or not our story is a type of whether or not our link is redirecting us to a story. Story is equals to deeplink dot path segments. If story data is inside our link, then we will get to know that this is generating that. And the reason we do this is that if you have a big application and you don't need to just be redirected to a story from a link, but you also need to go to like profile or a coupon code or anything else, so you can just pass that keyword and it will recognize that keyword and run according to that only. So if it is story, then what we're going to do is we will get the id of our story document, and how we do that is deeplink dot query parameters. Query parameters we get id because that is what we did in our like see this, like in our parameters we pass this query parameters id and there is story data dot id. So now that we have gotten that, now we need to check if our deep link is not equal to null. We'll do something else. What we'll do is we will just return null so that nothing will happen. Then I am going to do is I'm going to query something from Firebase. So for that I'm going to then do this inside try and catch. You don't need to do try and catch or query, you might just go directly, but in my structure of my app I need to go to that and fetch that document before I redirect, so I'm going to do that. So now we have gotten our story data. Now what we will do is we'll be going to our story page, and inside that story page we will be passing our story data. So that is it, and that is all required. Now the context however is going to be coming from this, so we need to make a build context that we will pass from our first init state. Now inside catch we will print our error. Now after this on message is done, we need to do on error. Now that this part is done, we can end this line. So with that, our Firebase Dynamic Links instant.onLink is done, and what it will do is it will handle only that which is, if your application is still running or in the background, then this function will be triggered. So now let's run it. And before we check that, we still need to go to our home and actually do the part where we call our function Firebase Dynamic Links service dot create init dynamic links, and in that we will pass our context. Now let's run this. So our application has run properly, and now we will check to see if this is working. So we will do this, and this generates our link. Now we will go to our Google and we will paste this link. Let's see what happens. So it asks us where should I open the app, open this link in the Chrome or in the app. So we'll choose app, and as you can see it opens it now, but this was in the stack. So let's do this story, and we copy this link, and now and as you can see, we are redirected to that particular page. Now let's see if we can achieve this without generating the link from the app but from Firebase Dynamic Links itself. So let's go to your Firebase Dynamic Links, and there you generate a new dynamic link. So now link that we wrote in our URI.parse, that's the same link that we need to pass here. Now it was story data, and then there was id, and then id will be equal to any id. So let's say I go to my storage and I find any story id, any random, and let's see if it opens that. Copy this one, and the title of this is peacock. So we write this id and title is, and the next, and then define link behavior for Apple. So I can, since I don't have Apple application, I can check this. Then link behavior, then I can choose to open the link in my Android app, which is this, and if not installed, then I can go to Google Play page, right? Now it's actually one more interesting thing, and this is open Google Play for versions lower. So suppose if your app is advanced and you don't want your app to only to work in minimum SDKs 23 or 24, so for those versions you can redirect them to the web instead of that. So you can choose to check this according to your. Then after that, these are the UTM parameters and meta tags. These will actually be important when you want to know where your analytics is coming from, where people are clicking your link more, for all that purpose. Copy this and go to our application, and we will paste it. Now it asks us where to open this, and as you can see, that story, we reached to that story without even generating it from the app. Now let's see one thing. Let's see if I turn this off or make this out of memory, and then if I copy a link and paste it here, it will not work. And the reason for that is that this function Firebase.instance.link only works when your app is running or active. So how do we manage it when the app is not running, not active, or not in the background? And this is going to be the final step of our dynamic links. And now we do the same thing. Final pending dynamic link data is going to be await Firebase Dynamic Links dot instance dot, and then we will get initial link, and this will give us that initial link. Then we will convert it final URI deep link is equals to data.link, and after that then we will check if our deep link is not equal to null, then we will do something, otherwise we will just return null. Now if our deep link is not equal to null, what do we need to do? It's the same thing that we did in this function. If deep link is not equal to null, so we can just copy this and paste it here. So now that this is done, this should successfully work. Now we will Run this. Now let's generate the link. Now we will make it out of memory and then we will see what happens. So it opens and our app is opening, and as you can see we are redirected to that story even when our app was out of memory. Now what I want to show you is what will happen if our app is uninstalled, and what really, if you have the app on Play Store, what it should do, it will take you to your package in your Play Store. However, if you don't have installed, then it will just run this to your fallback URL or your internet web browser link. So I tried working this, however in my emulator for some reason it is not working. So I built the APK, installed it in my mobile device, and I will show you the video of it working there. You can see that I have this app installed, and when I create this share link, now I have saved this link. If I click on this link, it will open that particular story. And what would happen if I uninstall it? Let's uninstall it. Alright, now if I click on this link, what would happen, that it would go to the Play Store page to that app package. So we have successfully done it. Now the deep link is done. I will give you a quick brief summary of what we did. We first went into our, we first imported the package. Then what did we created the share link. How we did this, we made this class. Inside this class we made two static functions. The first one was create dynamic link. Inside we created the parameters, we made our URI prefix, we made our link, we gave query parameters. With that query parameters we will use the data to reach another page, and after creating this we put this inside our send on click. After that we need to handle our dynamic link. This will also be a static. How we handled our dynamic link: first we created one, there are two functions that are, the first one, that this will be for the when your app is running or in the background, and inside this you first get your deep link, then you get whether or not it contains your that particular thing you want to. If you are, suppose you want to go to profile page, or you want to, then you can pass here different segments and make them do act differently. Now we get ID, and in this structure of my app, what I did is I used that ID and then fetched the document from my snapshot. You can also pass all of the information in the link itself, however it will be a big link. So what I did is just pass the ID, and with that ID I used it to fetch. However, if you don't fetch, it will be a faster process, no doubt, but there would be a lot big link even after you shorten the URL. So then we passed this, we fetched it, and we navigated to that based upon the data that we fetched from here. And then then after our background activity part is done, this is the part where our link was out of memory. And here is the same things, the same thing is happening. We basically copied the same code and it will work here also. Now when these two functions are created, what we did is, in our home page, in our init state, we added this so that now it handles the link. And other than that, one thing we also did is set up our dynamic links, and then I also showed you how you can send the dynamic link without even generating it from the app itself. We also added these intent filters for our app to work fluently, which I do recommend you to do, even though it's optional. So that's all. At last, the code for this, the Firebase Dynamic Link .dart, will be in the description and you can use it accordingly.